Okay, yeah, and there's Sue. Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I'm Mona Duncan, and am joined by some people that are some good friends, and invite you to be a part. On the chat, I have put my email and my name and that I'm in Texas, and I would encourage any of you to send me notes or give me some thoughts and so forth. Our topic today is our creative mind, and is it a friend or a foe? And as with most things, sometimes they can be not what it seems to be. But anyway, I would suggest that life is simple, but it also is complicated. And I find that life is not as complicated as we sometimes make it to be. Albert Einstein has said that for every action, there is an equal or an opposite reaction. And I look at that word is. There is. It's not up for discussion. It's not up for debate. It's that there is either going to be a reaction. There is a reaction or a response, and it'll either be equal or it will be opposite. And that word is literally means it's actual. It's a reality. It stands. It exists. So as we can begin to look at the thoughts we think and the actions we take, if it's equal to equal, seems to be that would be a peaceful result that could lead to resolve. But if it is equal to opposite, bucking against, then it is not so peaceful to bring resolve. So our creative mind is what runs behind the scenes. We're not really even all that aware of it. I like to think of it like the electricity wired to the house that is there energetically. And it is keeping the refrigerator cold and protecting our food. It's also keeping and updating the computer system and amassing emails, whether we choose to open them or not. And that the way we work, the way we think, is we communicate primarily with words, and those words then to us create a picture of sorts or a symbol of some kind, because we think in pictures. Even if it's foggy pictures, we're still trying to see something that would let us to understand what's happening or what we're being told or what we're being asked. And I think of my husband and I and our communication. He has primarily real interactions with three different genes, Jeans, as in a name of people. And sometimes he'll just make the comment, well, Gene said, and I don't have a clue as to which Gene he's talking about, whether, and in what relation it is. And so I have to say, well, give me a picture, give me a last name, give me a, where you're coming from. Or sometimes a picture, finding something that has been misplaced. And he may know exactly, given me the really correct name for what it is he's looking for, but I'm having this foggy picture. So I'll have to ask him, say, okay, give me a picture, give me a clue. Where was it the last time that you used it? Maybe I can help you find it. But anyway, our creative mind is the unaware part of our being that governs what we think and how we feel and the actions that we take. Most people call it the unconscious mind, but in keeping with choice theory, I refer to it as our creative mind, because it is the part of our mind that makes up to 90% of the internal functioning. It's giving directions to our organs and to our systems, as well as to being a seedbed, a fertile seedbed for stray words to take root and grow in us, or whether those words were given to us in wisdom, or whether those words were flung at us as a negative prophecy, or if it is just random words that we have picked up and that, made a deposit in the fertile, creative mind that's like a bird dropping. And although we may consciously want to make great changes and manifest something wonderful, at the same time, we may unknowingly sabotage our own efforts. So, what we take into our mind is very important. It is also equally important as what our mind does with it once we take it in. The inner workings of our files. I think, well, if I'm thinking these thoughts, if it's mine and that mind is storing it, then if I want to recall it, I can go back and think about it and remember it. But it doesn't always happen that way. I find that sometimes the memory lags. Sometimes you have to sleep on it. Sometimes you just can't remember what you want to remember. But we do have more control over the inner workings of our mind than we realize. Now, a farmer plants seeds, and those seeds will grow and produce to the degree that those seeds are nurtured. The field that is left unattended grows things that falls into it by happenstance. And so is it also with our mind. The creative mind is important because that is where the seed or the idea is planted. And so, in keeping with Einstein's equation, are we going to be equal to it, or are we going to oppose it in those reactions? So, in looking at our mind and looking at life and looking at everything in general, I like to think of the laws of the universe. Last week we talked a little bit about patterns and how they're there. And although that pattern is there, that can be predicted when the moon will rise within, just an accurate prediction of when it will actually show itself. But it is the unknowing part as to whether or not there's going to be some kind of another system that is blocking it being shown. But the laws of nature are true, but they are, it's like it rains on the just and the unjust. If it's scheduled to rain, it'll rain, whether I have a picnic planned or not, whether it's, it's just one of those things. It is understanding how our positive thoughts do certain things, as well as the fact that our negative thoughts do certain things, and how to focus more on what we really, really, really want and giving less importance to what we have that maybe do not want. We may have some things that looking at our world and situations, there are things that we do have that maybe we really don't want. But anyway, I've come up with looking at and thinking about how to connect, how to limit, and how to also have abundance. And so I looked at 4 things: freedom, meditating, using our imagination, and using our intuition. So I'm going to check I'm not real good about speaking and having, checking a chat. I will see if anyone okay, guess not. I'm going to start off with freedom. What is freedom? Or free will. Choice theory says that every choice we make is our own decision in the long run. And so freedom or free will is it's liberty, it's autonomy, it's self-determining. It's making choices or choosing not to make choices. It is conforming to what is or not conforming. But in that not conforming doesn't necessarily mean a deliberate, ugly, hateful pushback. It is, having worked with prisoners for many years, I looked at inconsistencies, how what I want can become what I do not want, how that what is a seemingly a super highway can turn into a dead end. So I kind of give you the punchline right up front. I was working in the kitchen the other day, and I heard from the other room the rerun series of Law and Order. And Jack McCoy was helping a colleague to try to understand the laws of the state based on the Constitution that's for everyone in, you know, that in the USA anyway, maybe not worldwide. But he made the comment to his colleague. He said, it's like getting through all the muck and mire in the world to find that it's doused in gray. And I found that interesting. It's difficult to find out just what is just and what is unjust when we cannot see the things clearly. So it's kind of like looking at the law of attraction, which is another one of those universal laws, that like draws to like, evil draws to evil, good draws to good. Seed thoughts produce seed thoughts. It's not necessarily for judgment or punishment or reward or favoritism. It is simply that universal law that what we focus on is what we draw to us, whether it's something we wanted or something we didn't want. That the way we choose to act today does not predetermine our fate for tomorrow or the future. But free will is exactly that. It is the freedom to will. It's the freedom to will to do or the will to not do at any given moment. And the words we speak become, well, the words we speak, everything has a vibration. You know, that's the big thing now. It's all about vibrations. And every word we speak has a vibration. But is it going to be that vibration that then turns into thoughts become things? Is it going to be that vibration that becomes flesh and dwells among us? So that trigger, whenever we get that word, whether it's through music, whether it's through reading the paper, whether it's through what someone said to us, regardless of what it's, that trigger word, if it goes into automatic pilot, this is what I want, does it lead to chaos, unhappiness, unhealthiness, brokenness, or fragmented? Whereas those trigger words, again, whether it's music or an action or a blurb of some kind, do I stop and pause and rethink before I look to see if that's something I want or don't want? Then, from my point of view, that produces life as being less chaotic and healthier and happier. You know, there's a again, not only about vibrations and drawing to us vibrations and so forth, but the fact of awakening, just waking up, waking up, waking up. And I find that, you know, the term rest in peace is more for the living than it is for the dead, because rest comes from awaking from sleep. I'm awaking from being asleep, and it's restful to be that way. And can help to, you know, but are we going to awaken to, you know, awaken as in pay attention, time to rethink. And are we going to rethink happy thoughts or unhappy thoughts, or rational thoughts or irrational thoughts? And maybe we don't know how to determine if they're rational or irrational. Well, our body is trying to tell us if it's upsetting us, then maybe we need to think and rethink again. Not that, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying there's not COVID in the air. I'm not saying that. It's not something that you can think away. It's one of those realities that is, but it's one of those invisibles that we can maybe make worse or better. But a person that has a 30-year reactionary habit, it may take several months to reprogram ourselves to go for an equal or an opposite in a kind and rational manner. So we have kind of superpowers, whether we realize it or not. One of those is adrenaline. I remember one time my mom didn't answer the phone. I was at work. Well, I was a teenager. I was 18, and I was away, and I called home, and we had the landline. She didn't answer, and I knew that was unlikely. And anyway, I went home, and she was hurt, and somehow I was able to get her in the car and take her to the hospital. And that's adrenaline. That's one of those superpowers we have that shows up when we really need it. And whether that superpower is to get up and go, or whether that real superpower is to stop and think about it a minute before you just go. That's kind of a superpower too. And so to me, I call it meditation. We looked at freedom. Now we're looking at meditate. And meditating is to focus. And you know how I like words. And meditation and medication both have the same root word of in, to heal. And so one is a healing without, well, I don't know. They both have healing properties to them. And meditation is kind of the gift you can give to yourself. It is learning to observe your mind as to whether your thinking is yes. Right on. Is it a reality? Is it a voice echo that's coming to you from something else? From something that is something that you are seeing as being important, as being not so important? Are we interpreting it as a put down? Are we interpreting it as something to react to or something to respond to? So we kind of yearn for connection. We do. We yearn for a connection with our inner self. Who am I? It's kind of one of the universal questions of life. Who am I? What am I doing here? Do I have a purpose? So we yearn for that inner connection with ourselves. And we get it. It's a gift of finding that quiet space that's within us. It's listening to your own wisdom heart. We have more answers than we give ourselves credit for. It's listening to our own wisdom heart. It's everything eventually gets done, just not in a state of emergency. It's seeing light from our heart, which is radiating. It's encompassing our whole entire life. Anyway, another point I was going to look at is imagination. That we're very creative people. And do we make that imagination, back again to the prisoners, how they can take nothing and make it into something that you just couldn't imagine. I mean, as in actually giving themselves or giving someone else tattoos from using not a needle, but from using used staples. And what can that give into the body system? But our imagination, we're so creative. And Is our imagination full of other people's ideas so that we have no room for our own imagination to flourish? It's kind of like a cup, and it will fill our cup, but we can only carry so much. And our imagination expands however far we'll let it go. And again, in whatever direction we'll let it go in, whether we let it go in one that is destructive or instructive, whether we let it go in one that is the thoughts, the words, because words can instantly put us into a state of inviting more or pushing it away. So in imagination, and also as I begin in meditation, as I begin to imagine, and I want to open it up. And the words that I use to kind of open it up is I wonder. It's not coming to an instant conclusion, but I wonder. It's what if I could? It's kind of a, is it possible? Could it be possible? Viktor Frankl talked about in that space, it opens up infinite possibilities. So a thought is an electrical impulse that becomes a chemical in the brain. And imagining is taking pure potential into a wave energy form, and then it becomes to that particle form. It's both and. Our thoughts affect the unseen world. Every thought releases a chemical into the brain that eventually gets into the bloodstream that affects every cell in our body. Again, either to heal or to not heal. Our cells vibrate and they release that energy, and life responds positively or negatively. The stronger the vibration of our thought, then the more focus we put onto that thought, the more the world responds to it, or the more life responds to it. The more the people we interact with respond to it. And again, back to that positive or that negative. Because thought is like the seed. It's the foundation, it's the source. Now, what led to that thought's a whole nother story. And I don't know that we can always know what led to that thought. It's just kind of one of those things that is, whether it's the equal or the opposite reaction. But feelings and actions are the result. And think about a piano that's being played in a concert hall. And there's a chandelier that is way up there, and that's way in the middle of the performing audience. And yet, when someone begins to play that piano and they really get into it, and they are really playing that piano, do you know that those chandeliers can begin to vibrate and cling together and add their own music? That's what we cannot see. It's called the law of resonance. It's called, there are no strings attached, but yet it becomes a vibration. It's what we cannot see that the universe responds to in the frequency that we are in. As in, the caregiver becomes more caring. As in, the rioter becomes more riotous. As in, thoughts are so important, as if because it's like a radio station that we begin to tune to it, because our frequency in our body and in our mind is there, that we either turn to the negative or we return to the more positive, or let's learn to go to the middle ground, go to being more in resonant, to think about. And then the fourth thing is intuition, which is kind of all of these together, they just have different words, I guess. It's listening to your inner voice and not fighting it. It's saying yes instead of, well, how can I know that's true? Because sometimes we can't know if it's a solid foundation until we step on it. Or until we at least, tap it with our foot, or at least do something to help test it a little bit. Again, back with working with the prisoners, I have never had anyone that said they did not have an intuition or a conscience. Never. I've never had anyone buck against that we are intuitive and that we have a conscience, that we have an inward knowing. And what I have witnessed, and also what I have experienced, is that sometimes we argue with or argue against that internal knowing, that intuition. And we begin to use our emotions to override. But I think if butterflies can navigate crossing continents, why can't you and I? Why can't I? Why would we, human beings, the highest order on planet Earth,
I don't want to wait,
not have an inner guidance system that would help to get us there? And it's my knowing, following my knowing, even that we do have a knowing system. And it goes back to meditating. Let the head speak, knowing that the head constricts energy. Now, why do we get headaches? I'm using my head too much. It's got too much energy there. It's got too much, I'm using things that it constricts energy. Whereas we go with our wisdom heart, and the heart will always accept something before the mind will. If we go to the wisdom heart, it expands energy, especially if we start humming. It just expands it. It begins to bring those vibrations together rather than the chaos that's going everywhere. So breathe deep and exhale from the heart. To give up your inner knowing, that inner knowing system, is to give up on yourself. And it's not to say that you instantly jump into it, but at least give it some pause, give it some thinking. Take a few minutes to meditate and imagine something that you would like to create, an outcome that you would like to be a part of bringing into existence. And so I'm going to bring this to a close and looking at possibly 3 ways to consider our thoughts. One is cognitively, by trying to understand it from a personal point of view. Second is by trying in a gentle way to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. Not to read their mind, but to understand. And then thirdly is to looking at that perception, looking at that thought, looking at it and assigning it a meaning. We need to find meaning in a chaotic system is a way to have healing and wholeness. Finding meaning is essential to see value. And again, it goes back to rest in peace is for the living, more than so for the dead. Rest comes from awakening from the sleep that we've been in. So I'm going to close out. Sweet dreams. Thanks for watching. Let me hear from you, and many blessings.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close and we can chat if you'd like.
Okay.
Hold on till I actually close this thing.
It's still recording.
Yeah. I don't know. I need to learn how to